All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Rewired Guide. Today, we are going to be talking about how to improve your balance. So, this is probably not something that people come to see me about specifically, but it really should be. Usually, people come to see me about a whole host of other things, chronic pain, obviously the biggest one, any other aspects of mental and physical health, or skill acquisition. And very often, one of the biggest kind of glaring uh, holes that we find in their movement is going to be balance. Okay. Their balance is not good in some way. Sometimes that's, eyes open, sometimes it's eyes closed. Sometimes when I get the more athletic individuals, we find that they've got really great balance. Like when you test it in like a clinical setting, they can hold it for a long time. But as soon as you start adding any amount of different stress to them, their balance goes out the window. And this then leads to lots of different injuries because they say, hey, well, my balance is great. I don't have to worry about it that. But yeah, I seem to still be having all these lower limb injuries like ankle pain and knee pain and stuff like that. Well, very often the answer is your balance gets worse in certain situations over others. So if you're new to this series, this is kind of a series built around, when people come to see me about different issues, I'm usually telling them the same things that I'm telling to lots of other people. So I figured let's collate it all and have it all available at all times. Um, as I said, balance might not necessarily be one of the primary reasons people come to see me. However, improving your balance is going to be one of the top things you can do for most of the different things that people might want to come when they have a movement complaint, a physiological problem, psychological problem. Balance is going to show up very often. I think so far on the Rewire Guide, it's come up more than 50% of the time. We're talking about things where your balance is actually going to improve things. And, when it comes to stuff like pain, maybe you can see where the link is when it comes to things like ADHD or anxiety. It feels a bit weird that there might be a link there, but what we'll talk about at the end of this video is the link between balance and cognition. And turns out that, yeah, your ability to think clearly, your ability to focus, your ability to regulate your emotions is tied in really, really closely with your balance. So this video is less about what might be wrong, more about just, if you want to train and improve your balance, these are things that I'm normally going to be recommending to you. And the first one, going to be pretty obvious, but let's talk about balance itself. So, the part of your brain, part of your body that is responsible for keeping your balance is called the vestibular system. It's a little series of let's just say like spirit levels that sit inside your inner ear, and their job is to tell you when you're kind of moving, when your head is moving, especially when you're turning around, like you might be spinning, moving forwards, backwards, up, down. The vestibular system's job is basically what position is your head in and what speed are you going at. And anytime that changes, the vestibular system needs to know. In order to get more accurate data, it also pays a lot of attention to what the visual system sees as well. So we say, like, you've got the information from the spirit level inside your ear, but you've also got the horizontal line, like the horizon, that your eyes can see. And at all times, the spirit level and the horizon should match. If you can see a horizontal flat line with your eyes, then that's a good chance that you're upright, or your brain will figure out if there's hills and buildings and things in the way. It's got a pretty good method of figuring out whether you're upright from your eyes, and then that should be backed up by the fact that your vestibular system is saying, hey, well, your body's still and your head is still, or one of them's moving, and this is the information that we're getting. If we want to improve our balance, then this is obviously going to be one of the top things that we need to work on, because if we can teach the vestibular system to deal with more difficult pieces of information or more difficult problems, then our body's going to be able to balance in a wider range of situations. So, how do we train the vestibular system? And how do we train the visual system to be able to balance better? Well, all we got to do is give it more difficult circumstances. So most people assume when it comes to training your balance that the first thing is the most important thing to do is you're going to stand still, you're going to stand on one leg, maybe you're going to do a handstand, maybe you're going to do like a weird yoga pose. And the thing that we want to train is the stillness. But actually, the stillness is only step one. Okay. So standing on one leg and being able to maintain your balance, that's probably going to be one of the easier things you can do. Okay. Um, when we want to make this harder, what we want to do is stimulate the vestibular system, so add some head movement, or stimulate the visual system so that they're not able to do the original job that they were supposed to do. So if the inner ear is not able to detect where level is, or if the eyes are not able to see a constant horizon, then you're going to find it much, much harder to maintain your balance. So actually, when we say, balance training, standing still is like step one, the bottom rung of the ladder. If you want to bulletproof your balance and actually increase its potential, then we're going to want to start either moving your head. We're going to want to start moving your eyes. So have your eyes actually move, keeping the head still, or we want to have some combination of both. So any kind of training where you're standing on one leg, you're in your balance position, and your head is moving around. Maybe that's in a straight line, maybe it's all over the place, whatever. Anytime you're doing the same thing with your eyes. So maybe your eyes are tracking an object or a target. Maybe they're just jumping and trying to find different things in the room. Maybe things are coming towards you, coming away from you. And then maybe you combine all those things together and you're going to be tracking a moving object while your head is trying to uh, do something else. So you're trying to shake your head, but while this object is still going through space at consistent speed or a different speed, whatever you like. All of those things will highly stimulate the vestibular system, and that's where you're going to get the greatest benefits to your balance overall. Now, that's at the start of the video. There is a lot more, because what you might find if you're the kind of person who already struggled with balance, that you know increasing the dose to the visual and vestibular systems is actually way too much. You can't do it without feeling nauseous, without falling over straight away, without getting like fear, anxiety, that kind of thing. And so, in that case, actually, we got to figure out, well, what else can we do that helps to stimulate the balance systems in a milder way. And the first thing that we're going to want to do is look at the joints, bones and joints in the body that seem to stimulate the vestibular system the most. And the answer for which ones those are going to be your spine and your ankles. So for the spine, you've got lots of little muscles that whose job it is to kind of keep everything upright. And anytime you're falling, that will give you like a little jolt in one direction or the other direction that stops you from swaying and falling over. And then higher up in the spine, you've also got the fact that, if you want to move your head or if you want to move your eyes, your neck is going to be really involved in that. So training spinal mobility in the kind of upper chest, or training neck mobility in any way that you can. So it could just be like, big circles, could be these like little side to side movements, little glides or things like that. The more freedom of movement you have in that upper chest and spine, as well as in your neck, the more comfortable your brain is going to be at readjusting and rebalancing you when it's feeling like it's, swaying, falling over, and things like that. Then the second aspect of this is going to be your ankles. So, as well as obviously playing a huge role in balancing you, and if you notice that your balance isn't great, you will probably find this is the moment you close your eyes and try and stand on one foot, your ankles just tilting and twitching constantly. Your ankles also play a role in helping the vestibular system decide how you're going to do things like walking. Okay, so every time you take a step on the ground, your heel will hit the ground, and the force that it hits the ground at is going to help the brain decide, is this step safe to put all my weight on? Okay, so if you ever had that feeling of walking down a staircase and you're not looking where you're going and you think there's an extra step but there isn't, and your heel hits the ground super hard, that additional force causes the whole spine to just jolt and tense up as the brain tries to figure out what went wrong just there. We need to sort this problem out. We need to readjust ourselves into a way to make sure that we're not about to hit the ground, because what we thought was going to happen wasn't what actually happened. um, and that's pretty much the job of the nerve impulses from the ankle. The quicker those signals can get all the way up to the brain and back down, the easier it is for the brain to kind of readjust everything and keep everything safe. So, as well as mobility of the spine, mobility of the ankle is going to be super useful as well. And this is where, you know, barefoot shoes and things like that are growing in popularity, and there's big debates of, are they actually better, are they not better for certain people. um for people when they're struggling with balance, I would actually say trying to slowly progress themselves towards barefoot shoes, whether or not they want to keep them for the long term or not, that's another story. But just getting used to the feeling of moving around with a more realistic kind of sensory input of what the ground feels like can actually be really useful. But on top of that, obviously, improving the movement of the ankle is going to be the more important thing. So you can put yourself in barefoot shoes, but if your ankles aren't moving well to begin with, then that's going to be a bit of a problem. And so, ankle mobility, super, super important. So we talked about the head and the eyes. We talked about the spine and the ankle when it comes to like lowering the dose. There's one other thing that we can talk about that might really get in the way of your ability to improve your balance, and that is this little front part of the brain called the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe deals with uh, kind of a lot of the things we might associate with conscious thought. Okay, so like decision making, ignoring distractions, a lot of our voluntary movement. So when we think about moving and decide that we're going to create a specific action, all of that lives in our frontal lobe. And the interesting thing with the frontal lobe and balance is decision making and all of these kind of conscious thoughts take a huge amount of energy to be processed in the brain. And balance, if our body's in danger, our brain will always want to prioritize energy to keeping us balanced. Okay. So balance doesn't necessarily need to take up a huge amount of energy. But if we're losing our balance, you can bet that most of the energy that the brain's going to devote, or most of the resources the brain is going to use up, are going to be sent towards the balance realm rather than sent towards the executive function realm, where we get to make all our nice human decisions and thoughts and things like that. The reason that's important is that when we start to see your vestibular system function degrade, then the if you imagine it like it's a piece of electrical equipment that just isn't getting used that much, and so it's becoming less useful because like the battery's dying out. This is a terrible analogy. I should have thought of a better one. Maybe let's say you like your car. So your car's got an internal battery, and the more you drive the car, that's going to charge up the battery to some extent. And if you don't use the car as much, then that's going to very slowly drain over time. Vestibular system, all the other systems in your brain work the same way. When you're not using them, you start to lose those neural connections. Your brain doesn't send them enough energy over time, and they just kind of wither and die out very slowly. Well, if your vestibular system starts to wither and die out very slowly, then you're going to find that it's not actually as reactive. It's not so quick. If you start to fall over, maybe before you would fall this much, and your brain has already kicked into gear, got all the warning signals, and said, "Okay, cool, readjust, shift your weight, whatever, change your gait cycle when you're walking." But now, because you're not using them so much, you're actually going to fall much further before your brain's even realized that there's a problem, before the signals have kind of connected, got through, done all the business. That's going to be one of the reasons why training the vestibular system is going to be a really good idea, because the more you use it, then the quicker, the more fast and reactive you can make that system. But as a consequence, what's then going to happen is your brain is going to be putting more and more energy into not wanting to fall over. So now you've got like this kind of old rusty system that doesn't get used very much. But anytime you then stand up out of a chair and your balance is challenged a little bit more, or you start walking down the street, or you actually go get involved with a sport, or you try to balance on one leg, your brain's now going to be freaking out because you're trying to do something that's way above the current skill set of this vestibular system. And so it's now going to take all of the resources and energy away from the frontal lobe, that's the thoughts and decisions and all of that, and put it into keeping you upright. Now, what you're going to find is you've got a bit of a double whammy going on, because every time your brain takes the energy away from the frontal lobe of the brain, well, now that system is not getting used as much as it should either. And so you're going to find that actually your attention and focus and decision making and ignoring distractions, not acting on impulse, being able to regulate your emotions, all of that stuff is going to get weaker as well because you're using it less often. And when you're using that stuff less often, that's going to start increasing like panic and anxiety and stuff like that in the body. And basically, you're going to find that your frontal lobe, working kind of less well than it was, is starting to panic the rest of the body, which is starting to cause problems to your balance. Your balance is getting worse at the same time, and that's causing problems to your frontal lobe. And you have this kind of like double sort of trade off where your ability to focus gets worse because your balance is getting worse, and your balance is now also getting worse because your ability to focus is getting worse at the same time. So, one of the reasons, if you've ever wondered why meditation often seems to come with like balance, that feeling of like being zen, you say that you feel connected, you feel balanced, you feel centered. Well, the reason for that is basically the frontal lobe and the balance systems work pretty strongly in tandem with each other. And the more kind of noise and chatter there is going on in the front of the brain, the harder it is for the brain to keep itself upright, keep itself well balanced. So when it comes to poor balance, while we can actually train the balance systems, the other thing that we might want to look at is what can we do to improve the function of the brain's frontal lobe. And very often that's going to be things like meditation. Can you work on clearing your mind when it comes to like excess thoughts and chatter? It could be things like going through talking therapy and things like that, where actually you find ways to let your brain process lots of emotions that you've maybe repressed or just kind of shoved to the side temporarily. When you kind of let your brain process all of that stuff, when you let all of the kind of chatter and noise sort itself out and kind of relax and subside a little bit, then you actually find that your balance tends to increase as a result of that. So the kind of meditation side of things can actually have really profound differences to your ability to balance. And if you don't believe me, you can test this one out. You can stand on one foot and start giving yourself lots of different cognitive exercise, arithmetic, language exercises, or just try to multitask and do three or four different things at the same time, and notice how quickly your balance degrades versus when you try to just focus on one specific thing. Uh, when I was learning to coach gymnastics, they always said, when you're teaching a kid to balance, teach them to look at something that never moves. And what that's going to do is, because their head stays still, their body stays still, and that means there's just less weight shifting and stuff. Well, that's true to a certain extent, but it misses all the stuff it does on the inside when you focus on one specific point on a wall or one specific object. You're telling your brain that one thing specifically is important, and it makes it more likely that you can block out all of that excess noise and chatter, which actually increases your ability to balance in the long run. So that's pretty much it for this video. I know, as I said, not everyone's here looking to improve their balance, but if you are, this is the three things I would use to go about it. If you found this useful and you want to take it a bit further, or if you want to know how to improve your vestibular and visual systems specifically to make them uh, better at balancing themselves, then I would recommend you check out our Neuroband course. So this is a little wearable training tool that we've developed so that you can do vision and balance training kind of twice a day. There's like a little warm up and a workout module, take about 12 minutes each. And you should see over a couple of weeks of training this, your balance is going to start getting rock solid. Uh, if you're interested in going even further than that, then there's a link below to book in a session, and maybe we can actually tailor things a bit more towards you, find out which things your body's struggling with specifically. Or, follow us on Instagram, rewire_ND, and we'll be able to answer any questions that you've got there. So that's it for this time. Do check out the Rewire Guide playlist. We've got loads of other things that may be of use. So maybe we'll see you in another one.